we have our paint, which is this material that this box consists of. Now the paint, when highlighted, gives us this grid or kind of patterned appearance. It's really important to know when things are selected like that, you can move them. And with this box, we have some really neat sculpting options that are possible within just using our pointer tool. You'll see that as I hover over the edge of it, I get this kind of slight smiley face or curve right here. As I go closer to the edge, I get something like a angle, and that's also important to watch for. So let's see when I have this curve selected what I can do. If I click with the curve selected, it allows me to buckle this in and out, kind of change the appearance of it. And this is the way you'll see me sculpt a lot in class. I like that function a lot. Used it a lot back when I was in Neopets. And I will hover over the edge here until I get this little corner thing and click. And you'll see that allows me to reshape it doing that. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Another thing that I like to do when I'm sculpting is to just take chunks out of this. Like I can grab a piece and then hit the delete key. That'll remove a piece. Go into here, hit the delete key, and you can kind of sculpt this. This is a lot like Illustrator, if you've ever used Illustrator, especially if you're a designer. You may have chosen to do that. And you can start making some funky, funky shapes. These funky, funky shapes will move smoothly from one into the other. And I'll show you how that operates in a second. But right now we've got these two poses. And I'm going to show you your first tween. Tweening is what makes Flash a very useful program. What makes it useful for the home animation system or for a small studio where you want to save money on animation. Afraid that is the elk on my talking clock, so we'll just kind of ignore that in the background, but my talking clock likes to make noise like an elk. It's an animal clock that my wife has from her grandfather. So let me just click between these two frames on the timeline. That's a middle mouse button click or a upwards finger click on the stylus pen, and we're going to create what's called a shape tween. And you'll see the shape tween very magnificently transforms this in a morph into the original shape. Now, with the shape tween, the only way to get this to work smoothly is to utilize the singular color with a fairly simple shape into a fairly simple shape. And there's something else you can apply which should modify this but doesn't always, which is called a shape hint. So if I select this shape here and I go up to modify and go to shape, you'll see that there is something here called add shape hint or Control Shift H. Now as this shape hint is in the center, it doesn't really change things that much, but let's say we want the focus of this to not be on the nose. I call this area the nose of this fish-like creature as it morphs into this box. See that that alters very little. Well, that's because it's very similar, this angle here, to that of this 90-degree angle down here. So the computer is just finding the most logical way of keeping the shape consistent. Let's take this emphasis here and say place it on the back here. And place that same emphasis. Oops. Careful, you can easily grab the wrong thing in this. And place that here. I'm not seeing a heck of a big change in that. Let's try putting this on the nose and see what happens. Like I said, the shape hint doesn't always work. In fact, I'm finding the shape hint in this particular newer version of Flash isn't kicking in the way I'd like it to. So for the time being, if you want to try to modify your shapes using that, that's fine. if you want to modify your shapes and the shape hints aren't helping, you should go back to where it says modify shape and remove all hints, because they are a little bit of metadata in there and there's no necessity to have them in there. But let's say like this pose does not please you right here. The way you can fix that is you could go to where you have your frame 3 or 4, probably gonna do it on 3, and create a new keyframe, which is to say an insert keyframe. And this we could modify. Let's say we want this to look a little more like a tail by pulling this over. Notice I'm not grabbing and dragging stuff, but rather I'm placing it. I'm hitting Command Z, which is the undo key when things do not go the way I want them to. And let's see how this tweens now. So a little bit different. You see this fin here modifies radically. Not quite sure that I like that, but now it kind of somersaults down into this shape. A little more of an interesting movement. Those of you who've done the flour sack exercise will probably remember the value of that. So just take a look at how that rolls into position. And let's try this one more time with the modify shape, add shape hint. This, you can see I get confused on some of these functions too. There's so darn many of them, it can be a little hard. And as I said previously, the shape hints just don't quite seem to be working the way I like to use them in the past. So that is the shape tweening tool, and I'm gonna probably use that a little bit more when we do a flour sack shape change, just to show you how you can use computer assisted animation to get some of your shapes to work. We've created one layer. I'm going to create another layer that we're going to be working on next. So this is layer 2, layer 1. If you want to change the name of a layer in Flash, you double click on it, and I'll call this next layer drawing. And I'm going to go to this first layer and call this shapes, since it is shapes. And we're going to end this tutorial at this point and start dealing with drawing a little bit more.